G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, having a little bit of a look at the local cemetery here in Glen, taking note of the dilapidation and deterioration which time and wind and sun and rain are wreaking on these old graves. Headstones are falling down. It's getting so the shades of the people who are laid to rest can count themselves lucky if they have surviving descendants to come and check the cemetery and walk around the edges of the graves rather than having to rely on the good graces of the government to prevent travesties. Like this from going on. I'm assuming that's from water. Although anybody who can track can see that other things are going on. Now here's a funny thing. Yet another War Graves Commission grave. Which is not really in good condition. But some of these are clearly not caused by water ingress. Turdus rabbit arsus. That there is a rabbit burrow. That there is another rabbit burrow. I actually knew that already. This is starting to get irritating. I'm happy to say that none of these people whose graves are being undermined by rabbits are family members of mine, but they were valued members of the community. What is it? With the veterans? Why are the rabbits specialising in desecrating veterans' graves? I mean, that's just simple neglect. The coffin's fallen in and the grave has collapsed, whereas that is Bunnius rabbitus attacking the Sharp grave, which has been here since 1921, refilled in 1941 and 1944. 1896 vintage child's grave. Hasten Van, number 136, another child's grave. I'm kind of hoping this is wind damage, but it's not actually a long time ago. I suppose it's possible that could have been vandalism. Somebody's apparently turned this stone over to see what it said. Grave that hasn't been operated since 1932, built in 1915, 1945. My grandfather and his second wife aren't doing too bad. Flower vase has seen better days. once upon a time there was a couple of inches of this sapphire wash covering the whole grave. But there are grave robbers, even in Australia. But at least there's no rabbits burrowing into my grandfather's grave or my father's grave. And the concrete in the deck hasn't fallen to pieces like some of these here. Wooden cross with a fallen cross piece. But this is the most regrettable spectacle that I've seen so far. Rabbit burrows. I truly hope these people have no descendants at all whatsoever, who might perhaps one day come along looking for their ancestors' graves. Would you look at the volume of earth that Bunyas rabbitus has dug out of the ground. 3rd of January 1919, aged 77 years. James Williamson. Bert Grange, died May 1920. Walter Albert, 1936. There we go, that might explain the rabbits. Private H. Folbeg. Hasn't got a war grave sticker on him, but he's right beside the biggest rabbit warren in the cemetery. That's a grave marker peg. Presumably somebody planted that tree on the grave. Lest anybody think that this is the first time I've discovered this. No, it's not. I discovered this last time I attended a funeral. Went for a bit of a walk to have a look at my grandfather's grave, just check to see that it was all still there. And I found this near it. And I have mentioned it to my connection at council, the mayor of the town, and a couple of years have gone by and nothing's happened. Loving memory of Agnes, Annie, and also Clarence Lloyd. Died 4th of July 1914, aged 5. 3rd of August 1914, aged 9 months. Beloved children of A&O Anderson. You'd think a town of 8,000 or 9,000 people could do better than this with the rates they collect from people like me. Surely they can employ a couple of unemployed people to come up here and persecute the friggin' rabbits. I don't care if they pay them to sit here with a bloody .22 rifle and shoot them as they come out of the holes. I don't care if they poison them. I don't care if they trap them. I don't care if they pump fucking cement down the holes. But somebody from the Glen and Severn Council needs to get off their arse and fix the problem of the rabbits that are eating our cemetery. It would strike me as being a vastly better use of the resources than some of the half-assed projects they've got to beautificate the bloody main street of the town for the pleasure of the busyness as usual committee of the town's Chamber of Commerce. Because, you know, they wouldn't want anybody to spend money on looking after the town's dead. Oh, shit, no. Why would you want to spend money on getting rid of the rabbits from the cemetery? Lest we forget, eh? Lest we forget. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Xmas. Happy Summer Solstice Festival. Australia. Ninth of January 1956. So you've got a little ceramic pot. Oh, that's a thing I didn't realise. Jeannie Ross Fraser buried beside my grandfather. Small world. Jeannie Ross Fraser was one of my mother's friends from the history house. I'm pretty sure she was a friend of my father's first wife too. Jeannie Ross Fraser was a nurse at the Glen Hospital, at the same time my father's first wife was. Infant mortality. It used to be a thing. It used to be a really big thing. Back in the day. Would you believe it? Rabbit warren, check. Australian rising sun on the headstone, check. Australian Office of War Graves Commission, check. Check, 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 check. Why is it that so many of the War Graves Commission's responsibilities are being undermined by the rabbits? Not always. Rabbits have been trying to get a foothold there. Aubrey Ward, aged 87 years. Tiny little plaque and no headstone. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. Eric Lynn's grave has an Australian rising sun and he doesn't have any rabbits eating him yet. But unless something is done, it's only a matter of time, because there is the start of a warren and there's the one underneath W.G. Stapleton. And there, under Norm Fletcher. This is weird. I'm racking my little brain trying to think of some kind of a plausible explanation for why the rabbits are attracted to service personnel graves, return service personnel graves. Might have to have a quiet word to the undertaker and see if there's anything different in the way return service personnel's remains are treated, prepared before they're buried. Because if there's nothing physical to explain it, then we're almost down to a situation where the feral rabbits are conducting a vendetta to desecrate the graves of Australia's service personnel. And that's kind of too twisty even for my head to get around. But Here's another one. Rabbits under the grave of an Australian returned veteran. And it's only 3 years since this grave, almost 4 years, since this grave was actually opened and used. At least the rabbits haven't got little Ian. His mother and my mother were in antenatal classes together. His parents smoked 2 packets of cigarettes each per day all through the pregnancy. He did not live 24 hours. He died of respiratory failure. I don't come up here very often, and I've been meaning to make a video of those bloody rabbits for quite a while. This is my father and his first wife. But there you go, and now you know. In Glen, we don't need Rio Tinto to desecrate our graves and make more money for the mining community. We just neglect stuff and leave it to the rabbits, who for some reason are specialising in desecrating the graves of our military veterans. And where some old graves receive remarkably excellent care, when the family cares, where their ancestors are buried, and others the headstone just falls off, or it falls over. This one's a bit of an oops. The Lightfoot family were funeral directors in the town for generations. Presumably somebody hopes to do with that what's been done with this one. Lay it down and set it in concrete. See, that one's cracked in half where it's fallen over. William Thomas Cadden, Christina Cadden. Now that's a better Lightfoot grave. In better condition anyway. Don't know how long this grave's been here, whose it is or what their name was. But the fence around it was set on wooden posts. And the wooden posts have subsided, been eaten away or rotted away. But as the ultimate symbol of neglect, I don't think you can go past this massive active rabbit warren with 19 entrances. Oopsie, I lied. 20 nest entrances. How negligent is my town council that we permit this to go on? And if anybody has got any idea as to why it's the veterans' graves that have suffered the worst, I would love to hear your theory. And I suppose in 1936, just as the Great Depression was ending, the undertaker couldn't even make decent fake marble concrete. Another fallen stone. Ashes to ashes and dust to dust. If the worms don't get you, then the bunny rabbits must. I know it's a big job, but I think if you're going to charge people money to sell them a grave, you've probably got an obligation to make sure that it doesn't get undermined by rabbits. They've made the main street look beautiful. Indeed. If you want to beautificate the main street or the highway, there's all the money in the world for you to do that. We can get government grants for public artworks. Yeah, that's no problem. You can dig up the old footpaths and repave them. We can dig up the main street and repave that. We can paint the town hall. We can build a dinky little town square. Oh yeah, we can do all that with our Celticness. But for some reason, the town cemetery is nothing. Is literally nothing but a bloody rabbit warren. Literally a rabbit warren. Damn near broke my ankle falling down one of them then. We've even got some rather avant-garde little graves, and this one has apparently been inspired by this one. 1942 versus 1952. And here's a cheerful thing. This is a military man's grave with no rabbit burrows under it. And here's another one. Rabbit burrow free. Which is good to see, because this is plainly disgusting. Absolutely disgusting and shameful, in my opinion. But what would I know? I'm just a fool on the hill. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. 25th of December 2020. Happy Summer Solstice Festival. Ciao.